Hey guys, I'm Tony Giddens, and today I'll be presenting my final media clip presentation for educating exceptional students. Before I get into it, you might look around and think this is just like a cellar, like a storage room, but this is actually my dad's office. There's a desk right here. There's a bunch of files over here. So it might not look like it, but I promise it's the most professional looking room in my house, believe it or not. Something interesting about before I get into this presentation is I've actually worked with kids who have a lot of these disorders through working at summer camp that I work at with that has students or children with special needs and aiding in this bedroom in my high school. So I actually have worked with a lot of these kids, but I'll get into it right now. So the first thing I'll talk about is learning disabilities. Sorry. The most common learning disabilities are dyslexia, ADHD, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and processing deficits. So dyslexia kind of affects a student's ability to read and comprehend text. It kind of alters the way they read and write. So when I think of dyslexia, what always comes to mind is the Percy Jackson books. And I don't know if you've read the Percy Jackson books, but it's about a guy named Percy who's kind of a demigod, but he has dyslexia, and when he is trying to read and write, the words just kind of like fly all over his page or fly all over in his mind, and he just can't pick them out and pick the right words together. So the best way to work with students with dyslexia is using visual representation, so writing on the chalkboard or whiteboard, playing music during study time to help them kind of focus, and at a young age using spelling cards to help words stick, uh, such a like easy words like he, she, they. ADHD, I'll get into that in a later slide. Dyscalculia is a disability that is all around math. Students struggle with basic math functions, ordering numbers, and struggle understanding time and measurements. So the best way to work with that is providing use of scratch paper, giving them colored pencils to differentiate problems, because a lot of times when they're just seeing all those numbers on their piece of paper, they just kind of get confused when they see them all. And using music to teach math facts. So I might show a YouTube video of a song that helps them understand a math function better. Then there's dysgraphia, which students struggle, is a disability that causes people to struggle with reading, or rather with writing. Um, they may tense up while writing, they might struggle holding a pen or pencil, and they might have poor use of grammar in their writing. So I think the good way to combat that is using an iPad, tablet, or computer to type out words rather than writing them, and talking with them during or after class to help them know how to use the correct grammar. And then finally, processing deficits, which people might struggle with auditory or visual aspects of learning. So to combat this, I might reduce distractions in the classroom, such as not have so many posters or lights in my room. And I might encourage working groups so they get to work with their typical peers and help them learn better. Next, I'll talk about communication disorders. So some common communication disorders are expressive language disorder and mixed receptive expressive language disorder. Language disorders uh, are, it's kind of in the name, or communication disorders rather, it's kind of in the name. People struggle communicating, they struggle with words, uh, they struggle with articulation, voice strength, they might not even be able to really produce speech, and even stuttering and slammering are considered communication disorders. So to work with this, you might want, when introducing new words, you're going to want to divide them into syllables and pronounce each syllable. And another good thing to do is when you're doing that, make sure those students are paying attention to your mouth and watching how you pronounce words to help them figure it out. And encourage them to speak a lot, because a lot of times these kids with these disorders, they just don't want to speak. They don't want to sound different. But a good way to get out of it is to learn is to actually get them to speak. Next is emotional behavioral disorders. And at my summer camp, a lot of the kids there have behavior disorders. So I kind of know what to do with this. Um, Common symptoms are outbursts of anger and even sadness. They can often show acts of violence and, in some cases, even criminal activity, but they can phase out of it with proper guidance. The best way to work with students with behaviors is to encourage them to follow the lead of students who are behaving properly. So if a student says thank you, you might say like, thank you so much for saying thank you. And once they start catching on and start following the lead, you're going to want to praise them. And you might even want to set up a reward system. So when they have a good day, you can give them candy or some other prize that makes them want to continue to behave properly. As I said earlier, I'd be talking about ADHD in a later slide. And ADHD, my mom actually works with a lot of students with ADHD as an occupational therapist at Topeka Public Schools. Students struggle to control their spontaneous reactions. They can't seem to sit still, or they struggle to pay attention. So something my mom does is she gives them comfy seat cushions so they're more comfortable and they can focus more in class and aren't squirming as much. Another good thing to do is give them rewards or provide them with written instructions to help to encourage them to sit still and pay attention. Next, I'll talk about intellectual abilities. Some common intellectual disabilities are Down syndrome and fetal alcohol syndrome. Down syndrome is a genetic disorder that when there's abnormal cell division that results in an extra full or partial copy of the chromosome 21. And this can cause effects in learning, communication, and even social skills. And then fetal alcohol syndrome is caused by a mother consuming alcohol during pregnancy. And doing that can cause brain damage and growth problems. Some ways to work with these students, you could give them alternate assignments or tasks. So you can give them, instead of just like multiple choice questions, you can give them yes, no questions or questions with a word bank so they can pick out the right answer. And something I did when I aided in the sped room at my high school was we'd watch videos over the material too, because they would absorb the material better, and then answer questions like yes or no or word banks. Understanding autism. So autism, there's a broad range of conditions. So as you can see at the bottom left-hand corner, there's high functioning autism, just in the middle autism, and severe autism. So some students might be able to fit in with their typical peers and might be able to learn properly with just some few social skills. Some are somewhere in the middle, and some may struggle speaking and moving and all sort of impairments. Autism affects how an individual learns and interacts with others. So I think one of the best ways to work with them is to include them. They learn really well with their typical peers, and also providing them with alternative assignments or tasks, as I said, for students with learning disabilities, such as yes-no questions, word bank questions, and having them watch videos. And then next, there's traumatic brain injuries. These can be caused by a violent blow to the head, impacts the way you learn, and there's also, such as autism, there's a wide range of effects that can be sensory, physical, and cognitive symptoms. I actually have a kid from my camp who had suffered from a brain injury when they were really young, and they're pretty high functioning, but they don't have any peripheral vision, so they can't necessarily see where they're walking, and that can obviously be very dangerous. So some good ways to work with these students are allowing them extra time on their assignments, providing them with assistive technology, and of course paraeducators. Paraeducators obviously would work very well with a lot of students, but I think in this case paraeducators would be very helpful. And finally, the last thing I'm going to talk about is vision loss, students with vision loss. They have impaired vision or are even blind. Good ways to work with them allow them to sit at the front of the room so they're not distracted by the lights and they can see the board or screen better. Have them prepared for transitions so they don't just come out of nowhere. Make sure you're constantly reminding them, hey, class ends in 10 minutes. You're going to be going blah, blah, blah. When you're speaking, announce your name. So students who are blind or can't see very properly, you can't just assume that they recognize your voice. You have to say, uh, announce your name, and then begin speaking. And also allow your student a clear path to guide them through the classroom if they need to go throw something away from the trash can or to get out of the classroom. And that's all I got, guys. Honestly, it's a really fun semester. I felt like I learned a lot, and I think it did a good job preparing me for the future and hopefully becoming a special ed teacher. But that's it. See ya.